Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Goosebumps HorrorTown review. This is the second review I've done so far. The first one was actually back in February when we did the Valentine Night Fever update. And unlike that one, which was more of a podcast-like review, this one's going to be a little bit more flashy with the editing and whatnot. It took a little longer than expected, but this is what you get when you come to quality content. Just saying. So, I'm going to be doing it like I did last time. However, I've gotten some more stuff to show you and explain, so let's get ahead and go through it. Before we go into the pros and cons, though, let's get a little bit of a recap of what this event basically has, or what is new interesting features to bring up. So let's go ahead and talk about this year's event. Now, it's actually quite interesting for the most part, because I've decided to fix a little bit of this whole list tier thing. So I'm going to go ahead and list off some of the pros that came out of this event, and as well as some of the cons, or some of the negatives. So let's start off with our best foot forward, and let's look at some of the good that came out of this event. Despite this being our first returning event, me and others seem to actually like how they've handled bringing back items, but also introducing new ones. This is giving more of a purpose for people to kind of invest into the game by giving these limited time event items more purpose. The questline this time around was actually pretty well thought out. I actually liked it. I love how it was a continuation from last year's event of Bad Hair Day by giving this new character, the real Amaz-O, to come back. And it gives off a good way of kind of paying homage to that book, but also continuing off where we last left off, so it's more of a continuing story, as it will. One of the things I really enjoy with this game is when you can buy limited time characters using currency rather than just having it with cash, because this gives freemium players more of a chance to get things and feel like it was more of an incentive. This year they've decided to do something a little bit more interesting by having a new monster scene that we can actually keep after the event ends, which is a nice touch to have because you get a little bit of that event still around. That means we still have those monster bunnies still lurking around if you were managed to be able to get that and complete through the story. It is really nice. Despite the new crafting item area looking a little bit more chaotic than the other ones, I'm really surprised on how well they did the balancing for bringing new and returning craftable items by providing a lot more alternatives to make it seem like it was more plausible to get some of these items going. The new decoration and Easter theming items that they brought within this event, it seems to be a little bit better than what they did last event, which was the Valentine's Day one as mentioned before, by having some more Goosebumps looking designs. One of the things I really liked was the cute monster rabbit scare decoration seen here. It gives off that more scary Goosebump vibe to it. If you ever played a Pixowl game, you'll probably know that one of the things they love to do when it comes to making money is offering people bundles. And this is no different in this game, where they keep on giving you different bundles for each event, especially for events. And I'm going to bring this up because I feel like the items they offered for these bundles was actually very well put together. Even giving players the option of the break the event bundle being offered and the items being provided there. I will say that despite that's a nice idea to give players that opportunity to get everything at once for a short limited time, the price seemed to be a little bit too rich for people, especially something like me. But I did it because why not? But one of the things I am going to mention is as you saw near the end, they brought back Amaz-O's bundle, the Amazing Bundle, that was actually offered last year. But the new addition to that is that they actually added the Death Saw prize as a unique item decor. So players who've missed out last year and wanted to grab it can now get it. Which at the end I think is a very nice and fair, decent way of getting things back and making that item feel more accomplished and more special to people who've actually participated in last year's event. As you know, when it comes to these events, there's always this new premium character that is added to the game. This year's no different when they added the Magical Assistant. Now, the Magical Assistant was actually previously only available as a spawn for Amaz-O's curtain thing here, where you had to pay money in order to be able to use her. And honestly, not a lot of people actually got video of this, so it was a nice, for me anyways, to show you what this character is. One of the things I like about this character being added is the fact that she's not technically really the character, it's more so the bunny she's holding and what's being implied of who's really controlling who. I love the kind of concept where you have someone actually being the puppet and the puppeteer is actually well hidden in sight. But it also gives more true to the Bad Hair Day story where Amaz-O was actually a bunny rabbit this entire time. The other thing I will say about the character is I love the animations that they've been able to actually provide here. It was really cool, and it's nice to see the bunny being basically used for the most of the advantages. One thing that really interests me was the fact that the bunny itself is actually very hidden. You don't actually see its face except for one particular animation, and I'm wondering if that was done on purpose because of the whole Amaz-O being hidden kind of deal, not realizing that he's actually a rabbit this entire time. Speaking of animation, a lot of people, myself included, really loved Lucy's bunny animation that was provided. I was a little bit bummed out though that you only get a one and done kind of deal with that, so it kind of sucked to see this not returning, but perhaps maybe they can add this kind of feature to the Magical Assistant by having the bunny being able to walk around. Maybe that can be the turnaround here. And finally we come to our grand prize. This time it was actually kind of a cool statue called the Rabid statue. And I really like the design here, but they kind of give it more of a creepier look, but also giving it an honor to the cover of Bad Hair Day. Now, one of the things here, though, is what's going to be leading up right next, and that is some of the cons, though. As you know previously, most of the event grand prizes were these unique decors that you can get and actually looks like a big, great prize to grab. But now, this year, it's basically nothing more than a book statue award that you usually get when you complete a book. Now, I'm not sure if they did this on purpose because this is their sign of actually doing that special book option that's being teased since November. But if that's the case, I wouldn't be surprised, and then perhaps people who weren't able to get that item will still be able to get it in the future. So we'll wait and see what leads up next and what they bring. Now, I always have to bring this up. The other problem for at least one of these items, and what I'm talking about is Amaz-O's cape, is the fact that 70% of a drop rate isn't really that great. I've even had a lot of people complain about this particular drop being hard to grab, so you can only imagine with 30% that you're basically not being able to get it, and that kind of sucks for players. I feel like I understand the reason of making premium characters really reliable and the whole monetization, I get that, but you don't want to put it to a point where you frustrate your player base to the point where they don't even bother playing the game anymore because they're getting frustrated by not being able to get the items they need because of the drop rate being somewhat crappy. And I'm going to bring up the cape in particular because I haven't heard much complaint when it comes to the carrots. In fact, when I was playing it, I was able to grab the new scene carrots, but not Amaz-O's capes. That one seems to be the more troublesome one, which is bizarre to me. Now this complaint, I'm not sure if it's because it's my fault for being a premium player, but I felt that the quest lines were very short for what they were, and felt like nothing to do besides getting 100% of the game. I understand that when you're playing this game as a freemium player that it's going to take some grind to get some of the items. I understand that. I guess that's where they're kind of leaving it to. But I guess after playing the game during Halloween and that length of time, you kind of feel like you have to balance the whole scheduling time thing out so that it feels like something's getting accomplished rather than just have it feel limited. So perhaps maybe next time they'll be able to fix that problem by either adding new storylines or having a way to kind of balancing that things out without it feeling too frustrating for new players, but not frustrating for old premium players. Speaking of quest lines, I might as well bring this up. Originally, I saw someone complain that there was no Amaz-O quest, but after reviewing and editing the playthrough, I noticed that that actually wasn't the case. There is an Amaz-O quest line, but I was looking at why that misconception was made, and I realized it's because it wasn't clear in the icons. Before, one of the best examples of this is if you look at the Halloween event, you notice how on the screen here, the characters that are in the limited time quest, they have a little icon on the side there to let you know, oh, this is an event icon, and this is the character you need to continue with the event. Here, they're just different Easter-related items, so you have no idea what is which. I think this started since December and has not changed since then. So maybe in the next update, whatever that might be, they might actually introduce this by fixing that problem outright. So maybe in the next future update, they actually can fix this problem by making it a little bit more clear to players like myself what the distinction is between what quest is needed for what character. Despite the old and new items coming back, some of them feel a little bit too expensive. Okay, let me be fair. I'm actually talking about one item in particular, and that is the bronze statue. I understand that this was from the last event, but I'm surprised they don't even bother changing the price, because that's just too much money. As I probably mentioned before, this is basically taking what is equivalent to me $100 worth of an item. And it's nothing more than just a static statue, no animation, nothing. So in the future, if you do an item like this, have it so that it feels like it's a challenge, but not like too confusing, like 1,000, 10k. I guess that's fine. A lot of people seem to be fair with that, or somewhat in between the middle of that kind of price line. Or you can make that item more valuable and worth the 500,000 coins that you're asking for. That way, there's less of a cheapness and there's even more of an incentive to go grab it. If it's like an animation decor that actually looks cool, then I can understand the price, but that's a little too high for a lot of players, including myself. Now, I've mentioned before that I've enjoyed what they did during the bundles and what items they've been offering there. What I forgot to mention is that there was one particular item that I had a problem with that I want to bring up, and that was the Eggzeppelin, which really doesn't look like an Eggzeppelin, but whatever. This item in particular, because this is something I dislike seeing in a game, is that there's only an item that is valuable that can only be attained by paying them money. Now I'm not in favor for items like we've gotten used to, like items that drop scares or just decor. That's fine because they do nothing, and sometimes with the scares they're not really required. In fact, it kind of hurts you by making an unfair advantage to the scare meter thing. But offering characters or scenes or even event dropping items, this is somewhat of a negative thing going forward, because you're now kind of making the game pay to win, which is never really a good sign. Now, I'm not going to say that the item itself was needed. In fact, I didn't buy it and I didn't need it. And I understand the reasoning for it is that so players feel incentive to get the new item. I get that. But what's interesting to me is that some of the players who actually bought this item that they actually were happy with felt the same way, where they didn't like the idea that this was introduced this way, that the item that gives you the Easter currency, the Easter craftables, you can only get in this bundle, which costs money. Now this is something of a problem that I've figured out, that it's been in the game for a while, but its presence was known here due to one final quest. And that problem is Sator's Pawn Shop, aka the RNG system. Now, most of the time I actually have no problem with the RNG system. I feel like that's a kind of cool way to keep you entertained, but you have no idea what's going to come up next. But when you have a quest that requires you to sell a particular item, it's a pain to get that item listing to a price and a option that you want. What I've noticed too with this particular quest is that every time I log off and log back in, that the first item offered, which is the magic kit that I had to sell, always appears on the top. The other two never appear at all. And I'm wondering why that's the case. That seems kind of bizarre and stupid. So either you change it so that it's able to have those three items together, or don't even have that option at all. Or have it an easy way for people to do such a thing if they so choose. It's something that a lot of players have talked about with the whole selling system, especially when it comes to the takedown updates, because what a lot of players always find difficult is when you get all these craftable items only to disappear later, and yet there's no option to sell them for coins. The only way you can do that is once the event ends and before the takedown update comes in, you have that option to actually sell them. But the problem is, after the event ends, those items never really return. It's not like they keep on spawning, so it makes it somewhat unfair that you're not able to sell these things and then they just disappear. Despite the items that were added into this game had a better result in the creepy factor from the previous event, I feel like there's not enough items here to qualify it to be really that great. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these items feel really cool to have, like magic stuff and circus stuff and even Easter stuff that even has some creepy decor here. But there's not enough kind of goosebump feeling items. Nothing like too grand or anything that makes you go, oh cool, I want that in my town. Get the spookiness up and going. So perhaps they can do something where they add more creepy items in there, or have it so that there's something of a middle ground where you can get an item that actually looks normal, but maybe it's decrepit and not been used a lot, so it makes it look more creepier than it should be. So it's in that element of it being a Goosebumps, but not really quite there yet, but it's not normal either. With the amount of characters used for this event, I'm surprised that not a lot of them were very useful. What surprised me is that there was no quest lines associated with Theodore, Andrew, or even Clarissa, despite them being able to drop items for this event. Now, last year, I believe for Andrew that there was actually an event that kind of led him to reasoning of why he's looking at good old times animation there. But this year we didn't get that, or anything of the sorts. So it felt like some of these characters felt useless to this event compared to last year when they had a lot more characters involved. Maybe an example that they can do was maybe explain why Clarissa is making rabbits come out of her hat, or even bring up an idea using characters that may not even be magic related but have them be involved, like, I don't know, Professor Shock. Maybe he's interested in the magic Amaz-O, so he's trying to invent a machine or use that power for whatever. You know what I'm getting at, like something like that, something where you're making some of these characters feel more like they give a damn. Now, one minor thing I'm going to bring up for the whole con thing is that there seems to be a lack use for the Easter eggs once you get everything. It seems like you get to a point where you get the items you want, you get the currency, you get all that stuff, and then the eggs just keep on accumulating, and yet they don't really do anything with them. You can't convert them into coins or currency or anything like that, so they end up just kind of building up. Perhaps what they can do is have it so that you can use it for a certain currency, or in some cases even to the point where give it an offer so that at a certain point, like, you can get up to this amount, like there's a cap of how much you can get, but have it so that it feels like you're not collecting these eggs for nothing. So at the end of the day, these were the pros and cons to this event, and at the end of the day, this is the end result of what it looks like. As you can see on the screen, this is a quick little card review of all the little pinpoints of interest, especially with the story to this event. And the reason I did this was it was more easier to do within the video to actually show off. Now, here comes the fun part, where I'm going to be basically telling you what I feel like this event deserves. But before I do that, I might as well kind of recap on the other events that passed through, because this is the first time I'm actually seeing this, so I'm going to show you it here. So you're seeing each event from beginning to end, from first event to the second event, and if you were interested in rating any of these things, I ask you to kind of take a moment to pause the video and actually, read and observe them, so you're going to get an idea of what was the pros and cons to what I felt. Now, to be fair, the earlier ones were a little bit more harder because I was trying to recall things instead of like now, where I'm basically taking it from the moment it took down, so I had that stuff in my head. So, where does this thing land at the end of the day? Well, let's take a look at the final result page. What you're about to see is a list of what I feel like is the best to the worst. So it goes from top to down. So each card is each event, and the top part of the card is the good one, and the bottom is the crappy one. So at the end of the day, I took a long, hard review. I looked at feedback, and I looked at my own experience with the game, and this was the end result now. As you can see, it's in third place. Now you might be wondering why exactly that's the case. Well, here we go. So you might be wondering why I placed it in third place. Well, to be fair, I actually really enjoyed this event overall. I liked how they brought back an event and reinvented it to make new players and old players happy with a returning event content. One of the things that a lot of players tend to have a negative stigma with is when you try to have something be only available for like a limited time. I think the way Pixowl team actually brought back this event and how they handled it, I felt like it's a good stepping stone and a example to look for in the future. If you ever bring back any items or any events based on theming, you can do something like this in the future where you're bringing old stuff but bringing new stuff in, so it feels like it's a new thing. Again, like always, the theming was spot on, and it even went as far as to add a lot of good stuff in the game, despite some of the negatives that I've mentioned before. So, why exactly did I place this as my third favorite event, in my opinion, thus far? Well, part of that reason is that, unlike the Valentine's Day update, this event didn't feel useful for some of the things I've mentioned that the Valentine's Day event actually added, such as characters bought through event currency, more useful characters to use, adding content that remains permanently, etc., etc. However, surprisingly, this event and the Santa Claus event, or not the Santa Claus event, but you know, the Attack of the Christmas Present, the Christmas event, those two actually almost identically had the same pros and cons. They both were too short, they were good, they had some cool items, but felt a little bit and a lot of other features there. But I feel like the reason why that one came on top was because of how they've improved this event from the first one that was held a year ago. You get to see how they've started to evolve since a year since we've played through this game, and it kind of gets me excited to see what they're doing within the future and what new items they've added and kind of moving forward here on out. So I hope that review is a little bit more understanding than my ramblings before. Hopefully you get a good idea of where my head is at when it comes to this kind of stuff. And if you have stuck around to this point, let me just say thank you so much for taking the time to listening to me, my ramblings on my review, per se. Now, we got to the part where we wonder what exactly is coming up next on this event. Well, we've actually gotten some hints by that, but I will explain that in the next video, whenever update comes in, which is probably a takedown update. Now the next thing that's coming up is the next update. What is the next update? I've noticed something that this game has done, which seems like a pattern of sorts. It seems like they always do a event, a takedown update, which is a small update, then a big permanent update, and then it goes into an event. So it kind of has this 3-step cycle. So more or less we're going to take a takedown update, and then with that we'll bring something new to the table. Most likely some small addition here and there. As to what they're going to bring, I'm quite curious myself, and I don't know. But when it does come out, I probably will explain everything that comes through that. And hopefully this will get a little bit more interesting attention moving forward. So that's it for the review. I thank you for listening to my ramblings, and I'd like to hear from you what you thought of this event. Did you take part in it? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Did you agree with my list? Let me know. I love to have a discussion with you. So, that's about it. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time for our next update, whatever that, or what will ever that be.